Welcome everybody to the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. We are so happy you are joining us. Let us know where you're joining us from. I am sitting in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, which is close to Madison. And I am your host this evening, Alicia King, and I am a volunteer for Environment for the Americas. So I love doing the Bird Book Club because not only do I get to read really cool books, but I get to interview cool authors, and then we get to talk about it as a group. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And as we get started, I want to give an overview of Environment for the Americas. I see familiar faces and I recognize a few folks. So you've heard my spiel before, but I want to make sure that folks that are new or joining us have an opportunity to understand just who Environment for the Americas is. And again, I'm Alicia King, and I am your volunteer host this evening. And joining me is Elise. Elise is the person who makes sure things work for us. All right, so let me then share my screen, and I'm going to give a quick little overview. So when I did this overview a little bit earlier, my screen was not cooperating, so hopefully it will cooperate. All right, so Environment for the Americas. Our thing is protecting, connecting, and inspiring. We're committed to connecting diverse people to nature and bird conservation. So being inclusive, being aware of all of the different people that it takes to think about protecting, connecting, and inspiring. We lead global partnerships focused on bird conservation. We work to protect migratory species and their habitats across international borders. So we work globally. And our programs, we really focus to nurture the next generation of conservationists. And we do this through education, through outreach, and creating meaningful opportunities. So we are the home of World Migratory Bird Day, and that's kind of our cornerstone conservation campaign. And it's pretty central to all of our campaigns. And this annual awareness raising initiative highlights the need for conservation, the conservation of migratory birds and their habitats. So this global reach allows us to really think about action and inspiration to conserve both birds and their environments through that education and public engagement and that joint partnership opportunities and activities across borders. So every year we choose a different theme for World Migratory Bird Day. This year's World Migratory Bird Day theme focuses on community science and the impact it has on bird conservation. And so every bird that we count, those observations really matter. It helps to give us an idea of what's going on in the birding world and what's going on with birds, and how does that community science impact and influence the actions that we take to conserve birds and their habitats. So it's incredibly important. And one of the things that's really important is our internship programs and engaging and empowering especially underrepresented early career professionals. So we have a lot of partnerships. We partner with the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land Management, quite a long list. We work with bird clubs and Audubon chapters and other natural resource agencies and organizations. So one of the things that we offer a lot of things, but we offer the hands-on experience and mentorship. And we really do want to equip the next generation of conservationists with the skills and connections that really help them to be able to build their stewardship and conservation careers, because the careers really help to ensure that they're going to be successful. So setting them up for success. So there are a lot of ways that you can be involved. You can support our work through becoming a member. So going on our website, you can become a member of Environment for the Americas. You can donate money, always. We always ask for that, don't we? Donate money to us. We created a happy kit and we send that to educators in Latin America. And this material are full of conservation education resources. So those things are incredibly valuable on the ground for these teachers and educators to be able to reach their students and people in the communities. You can donate toward binoculars. You can even donate used binoculars. So you can give us money or give us your binoculars. You can also give us airline miles. So we fly a lot of places. Our interns have to go to training sessions and meet with people. And you can help get them around the country by donating your miles if you're not using them. And then if you're going on a trip, you can take materials with you and meet up with somebody. We've got lots of suitcases. We go shopping for old suitcases, fill them up with a bunch of stuff, and then fly in places. So my last trip to Colombia, 2 of my suitcases were full of educational materials, and then I had a little tiny material with my clothing. So lots of ways that you can help us do the things that we need to do to continue our good work. You can also go shopping. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see my earrings. I have these really cool feather earrings. We have a lot of cool things. Who doesn't want to go shopping? And it benefits environment for the Americas. So you can help us by spending money. So we love that you're here for the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. And as I mentioned, I seeing lots of familiar faces. And so thanks for coming back again and again and reading the books with us. It's the second Thursday of every month, and you can register for one or some or all of them. And so we're just trying to make that easy for you. So tonight, our author is Gretchen Newberry, and poof, I had a lot of fun reading her book. And those of you that join us on a regular basis know my style of going in and really diving into things that I want to learn more about. So we're going to have an opportunity to talk to Gretchen in detail about the field work that she's done and the cool things that she's discovered. And I'm going to warn you guys right now that the barn swallows are going crazy outside my window. So I'm going to be distracted, no doubt, distracted. I do want to mention that next month, June, our June Bird Book Club is The Feather Detective. So Mystery, Mayhem, and the Magnificent Life of Roxy Layburn by Chris Sweeney. So totally a mystery buff lover I am. That's going to be a great opportunity for us to have a little bit of mystery. So I am going to hopefully stop sharing my screen. All right, was I successful? Yay. All right, so Gretchen, welcome to the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. And boy, do I have a lot of things I want to talk to you about. First, I would love for you to tell us just a little bit more about you. Give us a little bit of overview of your bio. You had spent some time in Wisconsin, but you're no longer in Wisconsin. But tell us a little bit about you, and then you want to share a little bit about some of your research. And then after you share your slides, and spoiler alert, you guys, she has some video. And it's the kind of video that you go, oh, so just be prepared. And then once you show your video, we'll go into moderating questions in the chat. So you all on the Bird Book Club, as you have thoughts or questions that you want to talk about, put them in the chat, and then I'll moderate them as we have an opportunity to talk to Gretchen. So Gretchen, I am going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you for having me. I am a big fan of Environment for the Americas. I own multiple T-shirts and I have posters galore, and so I love this organization. So I was really thrilled that I was invited to talk today. Yeah, I did my graduate research at the University of South Dakota. I went there specifically looking for nighthawks. I also got a second bachelor's from Oregon State University. That was my first step to becoming a scientist. And many years ago, I was also an undergrad at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I studied journalism and anthropology. Way back then, I wanted to be Jane Goodall, so anthropology was my route to that. Yeah, so now I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm gonna share my screen. All right. Okay. Let me get to that. Oops, here we go. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
There's
Okay.
that cute little, oh,
Yes. This is a Nighthawk chick on a rooftop, and that's where I worked in University of South Dakota. I went there looking for grassland nighthawks, but I could not find them in the eastern part of the state. So much of the grassland had been converted in that part of the state, and so I ended up working in urban areas. They nest on rooftops there. So this is a roof at University of South Dakota. In the background is the stadium where people play football, all the sports, right? So I'm going to talk about my research and how we can help nighthawks and other aerial insectivores. So this is the common nighthawk. Um, Maybe you've heard this call around sunset in your area. There, in some areas, I'm going to back up so you don't have to hear that the whole time. In areas where there are a lot of them, people have complained that they keep them up at night. That's how loud they can be at night. In North America, you might see this bird with its acrobatic flight around urban areas, beaches, open forests like the Pine Barrens out east, or in the sagebrush over where I live in Oregon. In urban areas, it nests on large flat gravel rooftops like hospitals, box stores, strip malls, and schools. And I study them on rooftops, I mentioned, because we lost a lot of grassland. And a lot of it happened because of the push for ethanol. In the last 20 years, we have lost more than an area that is greater than the size of Kansas. And so something to think about when we're filling up the tank. Why? So these are migrating nighthawks. This is along the Mississippi River, right outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I previously lived. And there you can see enormous flocks migrate together each fall. If you ever want to see a huge amount of birds, you can go to Hawk Ridge in Duluth, Minnesota. They can see thousands in a day, along with lots of raptors. So why are they called a nighthawk if they flying around like this during the day? Well, they are mostly active around sunset, but they are neither strictly nocturnal nor a hawk, and it's becoming less common, so they have the worst name ever. I should mention these photos and videos from my study are done for scientific purposes with all the required permits. The pictures at night were taken with my headlamp. I don't recommend getting this close to them or using flash photography. Um, can be pretty disorienting. So in the US and Canada, they are found coast to coast in various degrees of success. Red is where they are declining, blue is where they are increasing, white is where they have disappeared. And I have a little nighthawk chick that I'm holding there for my study. And so nighthawks live from Alaska to Argentina. Some migrate, well, some stay in the southern hemisphere year round. This is a map from a study led by Ellie Knight. I and other Nighthawk researchers contributed to this study from across Canada and the US. We put satellite transmitters on the birds during their breeding season up north. And each line is a different researchers group. I worked in South Dakota, so mine is one of the orange lines. And it's fascinating to see that most join up along the Mississippi flyway to migrate south, even the West Coast birds. So a quick aside, nighthawks are a member of the nightjar order Caprimulgidae. There are 96 species in the family of nightjars, most of which live in the southern hemisphere. This is a pair I studied on a hospital rooftop in Vermilion, a small town in eastern South Dakota. While I'm talking, you can try to search the gravel for the female. They can use rooftops anywhere as long as they are flat and have gravel to disguise their eggs. There's the female there, in case you missed it. So the females, they have They can have a white or beige throat patch, but it tends to be smaller. Um, and this pair nested only a few feet away from a helicopter pad and a construction site. So they do pretty well at hiding themselves. Um, this is me on a South Dakota roof. Oops, let me go back here. This is supposed to be a video here. Okay. And a lot of times people didn't know that they had nighthawks on their roofs. They are so great at camouflage, they tend only to come out at sunset. So part of my work was explaining what a nighthawk was and why it was important to study. They eat bugs, and this video is what it's like to search for a nest. At the end, you can see that nighthawk was skittering away, feigning an injury, and it definitely fooled me the first time. Okay. While I'm talking, you can try to search these pictures for eggs and chicks. So why do they like gravel? Well, if you're having a hard time finding them, you'll see why. They need that camouflage. They don't make a nest, and so they need to stay with their young for thermal regulation. And staying camouflage keeps the adults, eggs, and chicks hidden during the day. So there's the eggs on the left and the chicks on the right. It's all it is, but they got their eyes closed. They just look like little bits of fluff. So how do you find a nighthawk? If you explore eBird, and this is why citizen science matters so much. If you explore eBird, you can see other people's observations like I did, and that's how I sometimes found nest sites. You might look to see if there's a flat gravel rooftop near people's sightings, and you can check out the aerial photography and look for nighthawk sightings near large, flat, great colored roofs, so hospitals, schools, strip malls, box stores. If they are nesting there, you might see them night after night, June and July when they are breeding. They have a short breeding season. They tend to call and display less in late July. They're kind of the last to arrive and the first to leave. So they have a really short window. They like it hot when the insects are flying, so they have one of the shortest breeding seasons of any bird. Humid nights are best to go looking for nighthawks. Just think of what is an ideal night for a flying insect, and then you'll find a nighthawk. Some think that full moon nights are best, but I haven't noticed that with the population I studied. Let's see if I can get this video started. But if you do see nighthawks, it helps researchers if you post those observations on eBird for people who studied rarish birds like me. This is very helpful. This year's theme for Migratory Bird Day is Every Bird Counts, and that really resonates with me. Oops. These videos just won't want to start. Okay, one challenge nighthawks face is climate change. This is a chick getting shade from its parent. These rooftops are getting too hot, and it's important to know where they are moving to. They were once in the grasslands, and the rooftops are getting too hot, or people are removing the gravel. So that's where citizen science again helps. Where will nighthawks move to next? So there it is, the chick looking for shade, and that's the best place to find it. Um, Nighthawks have a lot of attitude and oops, back to that video. There we go. Nighthawks have a lot of attitude and not much else. They have tiny bills, big mouths, but tiny bills and claws. Their claws are really tiny, so even their chicks have to have a lot of attitude. Camouflage is a great defense for predators that rely on sight, like other birds, but not so much for predators that rely on scent, like domesticated dogs and cats. So, like a lot of ground nesters, they are pretty vulnerable to predators. Okay, how do they lure predators away? Well, females kind of pretend that they are aggressive. This is a female that kind of yelled at me the whole time I was checking out her eggs. And so sometimes they use a broken wing routine like kill deer to distract you. Or they can lure us away by just flying just a short distance. You think, oh, if I just had a net, I would catch this bird. I never did. The first year I walked around with a butterfly net and it never worked. They're pretty smart. Um, Nightjars have a superpower. So nighthawks are a member of the nightjars, and all nightjars have this superpower. They can withstand a lot of heat. They do this by panting. and entering torpor, which is a short form of hibernation. They lower their metabolism and hunker down until it's time to eat. These rooftops can be really hot. Um, and so I'll go back to this chick. Um, this is a chick that's only a few days old. So unlike songbirds, it's fully feathered and able to walk to shade after a few days after hatching. But watch what it does once it gets to the shade and still decides it's too hot. It's vibrating its bill and the gular region of its throat to dissipate heat. Nightjars are only second to doves and pigeons in their ability to withstand heat. But unfortunately, their eggs don't have that ability. Only 10% of my studies at nests had an egg hatch. Anytime a nighthawk had to leave a nest to lure away a predator, anytime a parent was disturbed by fireworks, I had one site where they never successfully hatched an egg around July 4th. That's time away from eggs at a very hot site. Just to give you some idea of how hot it is up there, in South Dakota, it could be 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius on the ground, but 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius on the roof. And this is the hottest location ever recorded for a nightjar. I did some comparative work with people in South Africa and other people, and yeah, the South Dakota roof was the hottest. And the scale of this is in Celsius, this thermal camera. You can see on the left, so it's the same image, but one is a thermal camera. Here, the female has just left the egg, so the eggs are relatively cool. And so I kept my visits really brief, so the eggs were about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius. That's in the blue. Um, so what can we do to help roof nesters? We can create green roofs to keep them cool with some gravel patches for animals that use rooftops for nesting. Killdeer also benefit. They are kind of buddies with the nighthawks. They call and alert each other to predators like me. Oftentimes I had a hard time sneaking up on a nighthawk because killdeers would let them know. We can also protect the insects to protect the birds. We've included the organization included Nucunda Nighthawk featured on the bottom right of 2024's poster. The world has experienced a significant loss of insects, with estimates suggesting over 40% of species of insects are declining and about a third are endangered. The primary drivers are habitat destruction from intensive agriculture, widespread pesticide use, and climate change. So this decline is happening at an alarming rate, and it's estimated to be 8 times faster than that of mammals, birds, and reptiles. So we have to protect our insects. So I just want to pause and thank you for your interest in nightjars and nighthawks. If you follow the hashtag nightjar on social media, you can see a lot of images of nightjars around the world. Nature photographers have done a great job in raising awareness of these amazing birds. And a quick plug for my book, The Nighthawk's Evening, and my Instagram is punk_biologist, where you can see more pictures of nighthawks and yeah, and videos. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Gretchen, for all those cool videos. So you've been able to share the Nighthawks through your videos for so many of us who don't have an opportunity to see them, because that's not something that we see a lot. Although, have you ever organized or been part of a beer party on a rooftop to count the Nighthawks? Is this something you ever do?
Uh, well, it's hard to actually get on these rooftops, I found. I had to do a lot of sweet talking to get on people's roofs. People are very nervous about people on roofs. But the good news is there's a you can count nighthawks as part of the breeding bird survey. You can record nighthawks as part of eBird. There is a nightjar survey network and then some states actually have their own nightjar survey. So there are tons of ways to record nightjars, and it's very appreciated when you can, because as you can imagine, these are birds that are way understudied, and I had narrowed down my search, um, my study field based upon where there was citizen science data. Otherwise, I would be searching everywhere, right? So, yeah, I do want to plan like Nighthawk viewing nights. I do have one planned at Malheur Field Station in June. The weekend of Juneteenth, I will be there just birding, but I told the field station I would be happy to hang around and talk about nighthawks because there's tons of them at Malheur at the field station in particular. So,
Oh, cool, cool. So people oftentimes do chimney swift watching, watching the chimney swifts come and then, go into the chimney. And you mentioned fireworks, and I do want to come back to that, but it's fun watching the crowd get excited about the chimney swifts, going around and then going down in the chimney. And it's like watching fireworks because literally people are sitting there going, oh, oh, ooh, ah, because these birds are, flying around. But you mentioned a couple things that made me, well, I had tons of questions, for things that you've written about in your book, but you made me think about lights out. And so across the country, so many organizations and people are getting engaged in and asking people to, especially during migratory bird time, turn out their lights and or dim the lights or soften the lights, so going to yellowish from the hard white and not facing up and that sort of thing, and just making it easier for birds to migrate. How do nighthawks, I will sometimes go to a baseball game, not to necessarily watch the baseball game, but I love the lights at night when the bats are flying around to capture the insects and the other birds, that come out at night. How do lights impact nighthawks? Is that something? Were you able to study that at all, or think about that?
I did not study that, but other people have. In fact, they respond to light in pretty much the same way a bat would. So some communities see nighthawks flying around baseball stadiums, around lights, eating bugs, just like bats do. Um, but they are also prone to uh, building strikes because of light blindness, just like other migrating birds and bats at night. So, yeah, they benefit, and then they also don't do so well with it. So it's the same double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's so that lights are one of those hard things. Like in my apartment complex, there's lights everywhere. And when I went to them and said, "Ooh, can you dim the lights?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, they're all connected and they're all on timers and they're all, no, we can't do that." So I think they can, and we're going to work on it. But let's get back to some of the things in your book. You mention human impact on nighthawks and thinking about the rooftops, and so many people do away with the gravel and just put some asphalt down or some kind of tar paper or something. And in your book, and for those of you that have the book or are going to get the book, on page 21, and I wrote in my little sticky note a little heart here because I wanted to really make sure we had an opportunity to talk about this. But you say in here, I began a period of my life acknowledging the part I played in each individual animal's survival and the responsibility I held. And so you ask about the value of data that you gather, and outweighing the cost of each bird's potential survival. And you talked about that a little bit as you were sharing your slides. Can you go into just a little more detail about what does exactly that mean, and what do we need to be thinking about as we're thinking about community science and how we can potentially help?
yeah, I mean, this is why citizen science is so important because it's so low impact on wildlife, right? I mean, our observations have no impact on the birds that fly by, right? And but uh you know scientists need they need to think about like what is the data I'm collecting? What is how much handling of this bird? what do I need to do to ensure the individuals that I am handling can fly away with minimal stress and go back to their lives? And uh, this was a question I had a lot, even before I started handling nighthawks. I dealt with this when I was doing a study with swallows. And it actually kind of led to studying stress in both swallows and nighthawks for me. Uh, what I saw with these birds that are prone to torpor is that if they felt stress, they would just kind of shut down and kind of click off for a while because they just couldn't handle what was happening. And so sometimes they took a little coaxing to fly away, and it was nerve-wracking. Like, is this bird gonna kind of wake up? And so we would warm them up, like, take them into the car and turn on the heat. That helped, like things like that. Um, we had this thing called the bird hospital. It was a shoebox, with holes, and then kind of give them a moment in the dark to kind of recuperate, and then they would fly away. And so I think scientists have to think about their research. Is this important enough to, detour this animal from its daily life? Is it, and I should say every scientist that I know has to has to fill out paperwork talking about animal welfare. It's all very typical stuff that people have to do. Um, so it's not like people don't think about it. But it is an important question, I think, that I had continuously in my study. It was, how much am I bothering these poor birds, and how can I shorten the time I'm with them? My protocols were very short. It was like, oh, I could collect 1,000 pieces of data, but am I going to use it? No, I'm just going to do what I need to do and let this bird get on with its life.
Yeah, and that I think you've hit on an important point is that what specifically do we want to learn and know, and how do we most quickly go in, get it, and be done so that we're not stressing the bird out. One of the things that we do talk about in birding situations is that if a bird changes its behavior or is stressing out, you're having an impact on it. And so maybe you're too close, or maybe you're playing a tape that, I know it's so tempting with Merlin, to, oh, who can I see? But in the springtime, that can be dangerous for birds because then they're spending energy trying to figure out what's that bird doing in its territory instead of defending its nest or feeding its babies or whatever. And you had mentioned the killdeer. So killdeer, of course, are famous for the broken wing, leading leading predators away with their broken wing. Um, as you were looking at this behavior, what's significant about the nighthawks and how they do that? Because they do, it's similar, but how is it different than, well, in killdeers, man, they can be loud. So I feel you when you say the killdeer gave warning to the nighthawks. It's like they're like killdeer, killdeer.
Yeah, Nighthawks did a little broken wing routine as well. They would outspread their wings and kind of skitter away from me, and it was very distracting. Like, why wouldn't I follow this bird that's clearly injured? And so I learned when the birds start doing that was ignore it, look exactly where it came from, train my eye on it, and go straight there and just ignore the bird. It'll be fine. But I needed to find the nest, and it became it, kind of an exercise in concentration. It was like, I want to look at this beautiful bird, but I really need to find its nest. And so, yeah, and the whole time killdeer are doing their thing as well. And so it was I they definitely have a mutualistic relationship, those two birds. I did find that I didn't publish this data, but I did find that nests that were on rooftops where killdeer were more successful than the ones that didn't have killdeer. So
Oh,
they definitely benefited. And then nighthawks, they would fly up and dive bomb too. So they were both kind of working together to protect the rooftop.
I like that. You know, one of the things that you said about the rooftop situation is that in areas where there were fireworks, the birds were less successful during that time period. And so, talk a little bit more about that. Like, you know, it goes back to what you talked about was how do I, you know, how does my activity or what I'm doing impact birds? And that's a big thing.
Yeah, it was very disheartening. I worked on one rooftop for 3 years, 4 years, might maybe have been all 5 years of the nest study. And the nighthawks would nest one or two times every year. And if they had an egg that was incubating on July 4th, um, they that those eggs never hatched because the fireworks would cause the birds to fly further away, perhaps go and forage further away from the rooftop, or maybe abandon the nest altogether. So it it definitely it was next to a large commercial fireworks display every year. It was right across the street. And then also people would come to that school to set off like their own personal fireworks. And sometimes I found like debris from the fireworks like on the roof next to the nest. So it was definitely like a problem for the birds.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a park here in Madison that they were successful in moving the fireworks display away from the natural area
Mm.
into more of a city urban setting because they were finding the same thing. And then Ruth has a question in here. She's asking, is there ever a problem with hatchlings falling off of the roof before they can fly? And then, oh, she says it sometimes happens with lease terms.
Yes, I did have a nest where the chicks ran off the edge. A lot of the rooftops there were like a lip or a parapet. I tried to study whether the ones with parapets were more successful, but I didn't have enough data to really compare. Um, so yeah, sometimes, and the thing is, th- the chicks don't move around that much. They'll stick to the shade. But if there is a danger, like me or other people on the rooftop, they will run away
Mhm.
and not know where they're going. So yeah, that did happen on at least one occasion.
And again, our human, you know, having an impact on the birds. And then Regina was asking what habitats are best for whippoorwills and nighthawks. Tell us a little bit about the difference between those birds and the habitats.
Yeah, so um I like to think of um nighthawks and whippoorwills both like forest. Nighthawks like a lot of different habitats. Whippoorwills are more specialized. They have particular forest needs for what they do. They're okay with an enclosed forest because they aren't doing this. You saw the video where the nighthawks were flying back and forth eating, and they like a clearing because they have long wings and they kind of fly around with their mouth open and then adjust their flight patterns based upon what whether they see an insect. Whippoorwills are more sit and wait predators. They'll wait for insects to fly by, jump up, grab it, and go back to their perch. I like to think of it as the difference between a leopard who just sits in a tree and waits for their prey to come by, jumps down, grabs it, and snatches and goes back to their tree, and then a pack of dogs. A pack of pack of wolves or dogs will like run down their prey forever. And they nighthawks are the same way. It costs a lot more. They eat a lot more because it costs a lot more. So they're kind of yeah, they're more like a pack. There's a sit and wait predator, it's the whippoorwill, and then so they like dense forest for that with a tons of insects just flying by. So their habitat needs are very different. I, I I'm not an authority on specifically what whippoorwills need for forests, but I there is. a kind of a density of forage that they do need.
Your story kind of, or the difference between the two kind of reminds me of bald eagles and ospreys. So bald eagles can be very opportunistic, and ospreys are like, go get the fish. And they go get the fish, and then the bald eagle comes and steals it from them.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few more questions in the chat, so I want to get to those. But the Carrie is asking, what can we do to help with migration? So if they should have a stop off, she had 34 fly over her house. Wow, that's really amazingly cool in Colorado. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it conserve insect habitat, whatever it is, right? Um, wetlands, oh my God, so important. It's like the nursery for an entire ecosystem. I used to do outreach. My first job out of college was as an interpretive ranger for a fisheries center. And so I would go out and just talk about like, okay, what do fish need? And I was just in the back of my mind, like, this is what nighthawks need too, is they need aquatic insects to emerge and then fly up and be eaten by all kinds of things like fish and bats and nighthawks and every other thing. And so whatever, pollinator gardens are great. All these things that, native plants, all the things that we think are important for insects are so important for nighthawks. Um, yeah, any way you can increase the biodiversity of insects.
Yeah, so not spraying for insects, letting things grow naturally. Somebody put in no mow May, just
Awesome.
having things be a lot more natural and not being so afraid of insects. I just bought one of those jackets that's like an insect net, like it's a mosquito net, because I'm like, I'm going to protect myself, but I don't want to spray. And so lots of cool questions coming up here. So somebody's asking the status of this bird. So moderate, endangered, and just so you all know, there are those of us who are questioning some of these labels that get put on some of these birds. So
Yeah, so they are listed in Canada, but they got downgraded mainly because they weren't doing well in grasslands in Canada, and then my colleagues in Canada found that they were doing great in the boreal forests, uh, because they actually really like clear cut forests. I would not recommend clear cutting forests on behalf of nighthawks. They will be fine. They don't. There's too much. It's too bad for so many other things. In the U.S., I don't think they'll ever get listed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because they're doing really great in some areas and not in others. But if you check state by state, it's a real patchwork of how they are. They are a species of concern here in Oregon, only because in the Willamette Valley, where I live, the Willamette River Valley, we've lost a bunch of grasslands. It's an agricultural area. But in the eastern part of the state where it's sagebrush, they're doing fine. So it's I think it's very important to know that if you have a species where we keep picking off its habitat, it's a generalist, right? We keep thinking like, oh, these generalists are fine, but there are lots of things that were generalists that didn't survive, right? So if we keep picking off all their habitats, they're just going to be stuck with one specialist habitat, and then eventually we'll come for that as well. So it is a complicated story.
yeah, and as you said, there's different states react differently. And then to your point of that community science or that being able to count the birds, it's incredibly helpful, especially when you look at it over a period of time to see what the trends are with those birds. So all of you out there sitting here in the Bird Book Club, if you have an opportunity to participate in some community science and go count birds, whether it's even the Great Backyard Bird Count that happens in February, usually around Valentine's Day. Great way to love your birds is count them. every bit of that matters and helps, as Gretchen mentioned earlier. So we've got some good questions in here. One, Andres is asking, what are the most unknown aspects of these cool birds? Like something, wouldn't we just know? I mean, a lot of us are birdie people, but what would be one really cool aspect of this bird that you would think?
One of them is that they recognize people. So we have there's the classic study by Professor Marslev out of Washington, who studied corvids and did this great study about how they recognize individual people. But I think there are many more species that do that. Um, and nighthawks are one of them. I had one rooftop where I visited year after year after year. And as soon as I got out of my car, the male that lived on that rooftop would recognize me, fly off the roof, and dive bomb me. And the first time I thought, well, he just does that to everybody. But it's during the day, and nighthawks won't do that unless they're really bothered during the day. And this was a school, and there were like kids that were there to like, do football practice during the summer, and he didn't bother them at all. People, maintenance workers, nobody, just me, because he recognized me. I was the person who climbed the ladder and visited each of his females and, measured the eggs and everything. And he sat in the same spot every day at the highest point of the roof and just waited for me to arrive and then do his little thing.
And harass you a little bit. You just got a little too close to his sweetie pies.
Exactly. Yeah, he was very good at his job. Yep. And then he let all the females know I was there, so that, made my job even harder.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's too funny. Um, Erin is asking, are there any successful efforts in the central Great Plain areas to restore grasslands and how to support those efforts?
Yeah, there's easement programs are really great. You know, it is the prairie pothole region. It is a series of little patches of habitat throughout the Central Flyway that make up such important habitat for so many migrating birds. Um, I would say duck stamps. Buy duck stamps. That money goes straight into the refuge system and straight into the easement programs. While I was living in South Dakota, I was in touch with the local refuge, and they told us like all these easements are paid for by duck stamps,
Mhm.
and by people. Duck stamps bought anywhere in the country. Like the Fish and Wildlife Service had sort of funneled that money into that central flyway.
Yeah, and so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service duck stamps are required by duck hunters. And so, in addition to any kind of state regulation, federally, you need to have a duck stamp. I've been buying a duck stamp, for dozens of years now, because 98 cents of every dollar goes into habitat acquisition. So there's got to be a little tiny bit that manages the process of selling the duck stamps. But it is incredibly important. Any kind of program that allows for the purchase of habitat is incredibly valuable. And sometimes states, in addition to the federal duck stamp program, have those kinds of programs for their state. So anything, and Monique is asking, please explain duck stamps. So I hope that we did that. And then I think we might be able to put a link in that will allow you to to learn more about duck stamps. Well, there it is. There's the link in the chat. But I am the executive director of the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology, and we sell duck stamps because we recognize the value of making sure that our members are able to easily purchase those duck stamps. Just incredibly valuable. And then I just want to make sure we don't miss it. So Monique is asking about habitat in Florida. So how does habitat for the nighthawks differ if for from someplace like in Florida versus someplace else. We know that they migrate through Florida. Do they live on rooftops in Florida or do they keep going north?
I don't know. I do know they use beaches in the Gulf. So, I haven't investigated specifically Florida, but I had talked to someone in Louisiana, a grad student who was working on them there. And so they face the same challenge that every ground nester on a beach does,
Mhm.
dogs off leash, people, all, oil spills, the whole gamut, right? I I camped on a beach in British Columbia where there were nighthawks, and they had terrific signage about staying, with the water line and not walking further up because there were nesting nighthawks, and they had a whole campaign about it because they are a listed species in Canada. So, yeah,
Mhm.
all the usual things that we do on behalf of beach nesting is so important.
Yeah, so you mentioned keeping the dog on the leash, and then of course, running or chasing birds on the beach is a big thing. I've seen lots of kids in particular do that. Okay, so Carrie is wanting to know, inquiring minds want to know. You mentioned, and birds are so different and how they do this, but you mentioned that the male had a few females. Can you talk about their breeding habits? So, what's up with this guy?
You know, they're they are not strictly monogamous and they're not strictly anything. They are whatever they feel like being. I would go I think there's sometimes a male who would cover multiple rooftops, like he was just the guy around town. It was like, and then he had his favorite female that he would, roost with every night. And sometimes males fed chicks. I mean, they just run the gamut. Um, Sometimes they were sneaker males. That guy who had a harem was pretty rare. Um, but he also had a sneaker male that would come in and disrupt things. I had one of his females never successfully fledged a chick because there was a male who would come and mate with his female, and then she would give up whatever nesting attempt she had with the original male to try with this other male, but it was very late in the season. I just like my heart bled for her because I was like, oh, maybe this year you'll get a chick, and it was just her heart was in two places, she just couldn't decide, and so she never had a chick the whole 5 years I was there.
Oh,
But yeah, they have a complicated they have a very complicated uh they're very territorial too. So but when they're migrating, they move in great groups, and so they don't have any problem with each other then. But once they get back to their nesting area, they are very territorial.
yeah. And
As
if
evident
birds are
as
that,
evidenced by the very distinct, boom call that they do. That is a territorial display.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the beat beat of it. So, oh my gosh, we are running out of time, but I want to just go into one part of the book. I didn't get to all of my little things, but can you talk just a little bit about some myths associated with nighthawks? And in chapter 2, you talk a little bit about goat suckers. What in the heck is a goat sucker? And what are some of the things related to? I mean, what does that have to do with nighthawks?
Yeah, so nightjars, their their Latin name Caprimulginae means a goat sucker. And so the mythology was that here's this bird that is flying around my livestock around nighttime, and I don't know what it is. It's scary. It must be drinking the milk from my goat. And and instead what this bird was doing was eating all the insects that were flying around your goats or your other livestock. Um, One of my first and this is kind of true of all these insectivore birds that hang around livestock. Like I saw that with swallows. They hung around sheep where I worked, and all had this very beneficial, relationship to, all these livestock animals definitely benefited from these birds. One of the greatest pieces of folklore around nighthawks, and I mentioned this when we were setting up, so I'm just going to retell this, um, is that nighthawks, there's a Native American tribe that refer to them as the burnt land bird. They are ground nesters, and they have no problem coming back to a land that has been recently been decimated by forest fire because they love open forests. They have big long wings and they can't really handle dense forests. They're not very agile in a forest, and so they are one of the first pioneer species after a forest fire. So they have a nickname called the burnt land bird. There's all these nicknames for these birds, not only amongst Native Americans, amongst different European peoples in different cities and states. Bull bat is another one. Like it's a bat, but it's bigger than a bull, bat. So it must be a bull bat. All kinds of names. And nitros have 1,000 nicknames all over the world that are really fun.
Okay, so one last question, and then, but before we go to that last question, which is what insects do the nighthawks eat? Do you have a list of Bird Book Club books? Yes. So you can go to our website, Environment for the America website. So very quickly, insects, what do they eat? Are they eating the really icky ones?
They will eat anything they can get their mouth around, and they have a big mouth. And not only that, but they also have something that other members of their guild. So their guild is the aerial insectivores. So swallows, swifts, nighthawks, and bats. Those are the four. And this is the most quickly dwindling guild of birds around the world because of the insect decline. But nighthawks are the biggest of that group. They also have the biggest mouth. And unlike the other three, they have a cecum, which means they can digest chitin. So uh, uh, they're the least studied of the four, but they are also quite possibly the most generalist of all of them. So the answer is everything. They will eat anything.
Which is can be very cool. Gretchen, thank you so much for sharing your field work with nighthawks. They are one of my favorite birds. I'm so excited. And Carrie, just so you know, I had sandhill cranes pass by my window, not 35 of them, but there were about at least 20-ish as they were flying over. So and poor Gretchen, I'm just so distracted. I was like, oh my gosh. Gretchen, thank you so much. Keep up your good work. And folks, if you want to go to Gretchen's blog, her do you call it, you call it a blog, a feathered reptile. So really cool things. I enjoyed going there and just learning a little bit more about you. Thank you, Gretchen, so much again for spending time with us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. And we will see you in the second week of June, where we have some mystery about our Bird Book Club. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Gretchen. Have a nice evening.